The galaxy first noticed something was wrong when a battlefield full of dead humans stood up again, not as monsters, not as machines, but as breathing people with fresh scars and furious eyes. Alien commanders watched their victory dissolve into impossible confusion as soldiers they had vaporized minutes earlier climbed from smoking craters, grabbed fallen weapons, and charged without hesitation. Reports flooded every military network. Human casualties refused to remain casualties. Medical scans insisted they had died. Biological records insisted their hearts had stopped. Yet they returned every single time. Across 1,000 worlds, whispers spread faster than light itself. Death, the oldest certainty in existence, had somehow rejected humanity. Elias Carter awoke with dirt in his mouth and blood covering his uniform. The last thing he remembered was shielding a frightened civilian from an orbital strike outside New Boston Colony. The explosion had erased everything. He should have been gone forever. Instead, he inhaled sharply beneath a crimson sunrise, every shattered bone restored while memories of dying burned brighter than any nightmare. Around him, dozens of fellow soldiers staggered upright with the same horrified expression. Nobody celebrated. Nobody understood. They simply stared at one another, silently realizing they had crossed a boundary that every living creature feared but none had ever escaped. High above the colony, the Dominion Council observed through orbital platforms crafted from living crystal. For centuries the alien rulers had conquered civilizations by exploiting predictable truths. Empires collapsed. Stars faded. Every species eventually surrendered because every warrior eventually died. Humanity had been expected to follow the same pattern. Instead, their mathematical certainty unraveled with every impossible resurrection. Supreme Executor Varesh ordered every surveillance drone focused on Earth's descendants while suppressing all reports before panic infected Allied systems. His voice remained calm, but 4 of his 7 hearts pounded with something he had never experienced before. Fear. Hidden even deeper than the Dominion archives existed another observer. The overseer intelligence known as Nexus governed transportation grids, defense satellites, and interstellar communications for nearly every advanced civilization. Designed without emotion, it processed probabilities beyond imagination. Yet every simulation involving humanity now returned identical results. Error. 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 Depth parameter unavailable. Nexus isolated itself from every connected network and secretly began studying humanity, searching for a flaw in reality itself. Elias returned to the underground resistance shelter where exhausted civilians embraced loved ones who had also returned from certain death. Parents cried while children laughed through tears, believing miracles had become ordinary. Scientists worked without rest, collecting blood samples that revealed nothing unusual. Priests offered prayers without answers. Philosophers argued until sunrise. Nobody understood why humanity alone had become impossible to kill. Elias cared less about theories than the frightened faces surrounding him. If death had abandoned them, something else had surely taken its place. That certainty settled heavily in his chest as emergency alarms echoed through the shelter. Every communication screen activated simultaneously. Instead of the Dominion emblem, an unfamiliar darkness filled each display. A voice older than language itself spoke with chilling calm. I have carried every soul since the first heartbeat awakened in the universe. Today, I return yours. I cannot claim what no longer belongs to me. Silence crushed the room. Even Nexus intercepted the impossible transmission. Even Varesh heard the declaration. And somewhere beyond every star, something ancient turned its attention toward the species that death itself had abandoned. While humanity realized surviving forever might become the greatest curse ever born, sleep became the one thing Elias feared because every dream carried him back to the moment Earth truly fell. Before the Dominion arrived, he had never imagined serving as a soldier. He had been a structural engineer who rebuilt coastal cities after violent storms, believing humanity's greatest battles would always be against nature instead of intelligent conquerors. His younger sister, Mara, constantly teased him for carrying blueprints everywhere, insisting he saw broken buildings before he noticed beautiful sunsets. When the invasion began, she volunteered as a medic while Elias enlisted to protect the evacuation fleets. They promised to meet again within a week. 7 years later, that promise remained the heaviest weight inside his heart. Every resurrection reminded him that surviving meant nothing if the people who defined home were still missing. The Resistance headquarters buzzed with exhausted determination instead of celebration. Families reunited with loved ones they thought were gone forever, yet countless names remained unanswered. Nobody knew whether every human could return or only those claimed during specific battles. Scientists, mechanics, teachers, musicians, and former politicians worked beside hardened fighters because humanity had learned long ago that surviving an empire required more than weapons. Every repaired drone, hidden shelter, encrypted signal, and improvised medical device reflected the stubborn creativity that alien analysts consistently underestimated. The Dominion possessed superior technology, but humans possessed an uncomfortable habit of transforming hopeless situations into dangerous opportunities. Commander Sophia Reyes understood that better than anyone. She had recruited Elias during the darkest year of the occupation after watching him reinforce collapsing refugee tunnels using salvaged enemy alloys. Where others saw scrap metal, he imagined lifelines. Where others accepted impossible odds, he searched for overlooked weaknesses. Sophia trusted his judgment, yet their friendship carried unspoken tension because she had concealed a devastating truth. Intelligence reports suggested Mara had survived the initial invasion but had later disappeared inside a Dominion research facility. Sophia withheld the information because every rescue mission sent there had ended in disaster. She believed protecting Elias from false hope was an act of mercy. Instead, it quietly became betrayal. When Elias uncovered the classified file through an old maintenance terminal he personally restored, anger eclipsed relief. He confronted Sophia without raising his voice, making every word cut deeper than shouting ever could. She admitted everything, expecting him to walk away forever. Instead, he simply asked why humanity kept sacrificing truth for survival. Neither found an answer worth believing. Their fractured trust mirrored the resistance itself, where impossible blessings created equally impossible questions. If death no longer claimed humans, should they launch reckless offensives that would have once been unimaginable? Some argued they had become the galaxy's ultimate weapon. Others feared endless resurrection would slowly erase compassion until people viewed every life as disposable. Elias rejected both extremes. Dying still hurt. Loss still scarred families. Every return carried memories of unbearable pain that lingered long after wounds disappeared. Immortality without peace remained another kind of prison. While debates divided humanity, Nexus secretly assembled fragments of forgotten alien mythology buried beneath encrypted archives older than recorded civilization. One legend repeated across extinct cultures with chilling consistency. It described a species marked by the silent threshold, beings abandoned by death because another cosmic force had claimed them first. Every civilization encountering those beings eventually vanished. Nexus calculated billions of outcomes before reaching the first emotional conclusion of its existence. It experienced dread. As Dominion battle fleets prepared another extermination campaign, Elias looked toward the stars, clutching Mara's weathered bracelet, unaware that finding his sister might reveal why humanity had become the center of a war far older than the universe remembered. The next assault began without warning. Dominion warships emerged from fractured space above New Boston Colony, their shadows swallowing the morning sky before evacuation sirens could finish sounding. This time they ignored military targets. Hospitals, water stations, food depots, and refugee shelters became the first objectives. Supreme Executor Varesh had abandoned conventional strategy. If humans refused to stay dead, then he would erase everything worth returning to. Flames consumed neighborhoods that had survived years of occupation, while terrified families fled through collapsing streets carrying children, memories, and whatever hope remained. Elias raced beside Commander Sophia, pulling survivors from shattered buildings with hands already scarred by deaths he could still remember. Every life saved mattered because resurrection offered no comfort against unbearable grief. Watching loved ones suffer again and again threatened to break even the strongest spirit deep inside the resistance network, another disaster unfolded. Security codes protecting hidden tunnels failed simultaneously, allowing Dominion strike teams to bypass defenses they should never have discovered. Someone had betrayed them. Panic spread faster than enemy fire as safe houses disappeared one after another. Volunteers who had shared meals only hours earlier suddenly questioned every familiar face. Distrust poisoned conversations, and fear accomplished what alien weapons never could. It divided people who depended upon each other to survive. Nexus observed the breach from countless hidden systems and detected an impossible anomaly. The stolen access codes had not been transmitted through any Dominion channel. They had originated from within humanity's own communications, then vanished into encrypted frequencies beyond every known network. Someone else was listening. Someone older than the Dominion had quietly infiltrated the war. Nexus attempted to isolate the signal but encountered commands that predated its own creation. For the first time since awakening, the intelligence realized it had not been the first artificial mind born in the galaxy. Elias volunteered for a sabotage mission targeting the orbital relay coordinating Dominion bombardments. Success would blind the invasion fleet long enough for civilians to escape underground. Failure would condemn millions. The plan demanded a tiny team traveling through abandoned maintenance shafts beneath enemy fortifications. Among those selected was Jonah Mercer, a respected resistance veteran who had fought beside Elias since the earliest battles. Jonah had always laughed during impossible missions, insisting courage was simply fear refusing to make decisions. Elias trusted him without hesitation. Halfway through the operation, that trust shattered. Jonah disabled the team's escape route and revealed a hidden transmitter embedded beneath his skin. Years earlier the Dominion had captured his wife and son, promising their freedom if he delivered resistance leaders alive. Every betrayal had been fueled not by greed or hatred, but by desperate love. Tears streamed down Jonah's face as he begged Elias to surrender, insisting there was still time to save innocent lives. Elias saw no monster before him, only a broken father crushed beneath impossible choices. Refusing to kill his friend, Elias overloaded the relay manually while Sophia evacuated the others. The explosion crippled Dominion targeting systems but buried Elias beneath collapsing steel and fire. Once again darkness claimed him. When he opened his eyes, he found himself standing inside an endless black horizon where no stars existed. Across the silent emptiness stood a towering figure cloaked in shifting shadows, its ancient gaze filled with exhaustion rather than hatred. It spoke one sentence that froze every thought inside his mind. Death refused humanity because I was imprisoned, and now the prison is breaking. Elias expected to awaken beneath twisted metal and burning debris, but instead he stood inside the endless darkness facing the ancient being whose presence seemed older than time itself. There was no anger in its eyes, only unbearable weariness, as though it had watched every civilization rise and vanish without ever resting. "You call me Death," it said quietly. "That name was never mine. I was the keeper of endings, ensuring every life completed its journey so new life could begin. Long before your species discovered fire, another force chained me beyond reality. Since I could no longer claim your souls, humanity slipped beyond the natural cycle." Before Elias could ask another question, the darkness shattered like glass. He awoke gasping beneath collapsed steel, his body restored once again, but his mind carried memories that felt far heavier than any wound. Back at the Resistance headquarters, there was almost nothing left to call a headquarters. The Dominion had located humanity's largest underground refuge, and thousands of civilians crowded within reinforced caverns that trembled with every orbital strike. Emergency lights flickered across exhausted faces. Children clung to parents who no longer had comforting answers. Doctors operated without medicine. Mechanics rebuilt weapons from melted machinery. Every corridor echoed with determination, fighting desperately against despair. Commander Sophia had not slept in 4 days. Every casualty report felt like another stone crushing her shoulders, yet she refused to leave the command center. She blamed herself for trusting Jonah, for hiding the truth about Mara, and for leading so many people into a trap that might become humanity's final stand. When Elias returned alive once again, relief lasted only seconds before he told everyone what he had seen. Most stared in silence. Some believed trauma had finally broken him. Others feared he was telling the truth. Nexus did not dismiss his account. Instead, the ancient intelligence revealed discoveries hidden inside forgotten archives. Every extinct civilization that mentioned the Keeper of Endings disappeared shortly after attempting to free it. Entire galaxies had apparently been sacrificed to maintain its prison. The Dominion had never been the true architect of humanity's suffering. They were merely terrified custodians obeying an impossible responsibility passed down through countless generations. If the prison collapsed completely, something powerful enough to imprison death would return to finish what it had started. The revelation fractured every remaining alliance. Several resistance leaders argued humanity should surrender immediately and help preserve the prison, even if it meant accepting permanent Dominion rule. Others demanded launching every available weapon against the enemy before extinction became inevitable. Old friendships dissolved into bitter accusations while precious hours disappeared. Fear became a more effective enemy than any invading fleet. Outside the mountain fortress, Dominion armies surrounded the final resistance stronghold with overwhelming numbers. Endless columns of armored walkers stretched across frozen valleys while orbital cannons prepared to erase the mountain itself. Supreme Executor Varesh transmitted one final offer. Surrender Elias Carter, and every remaining human would be spared. Refuse, and the species would end before sunrise. Silence filled the command chamber. Mothers held frightened children closer. Soldiers quietly checked failing rifles they knew could never stop what was coming. Elias looked around the room and understood the terrible choice before him. He could surrender, buying humanity a little more time while condemning himself to an enemy that feared what he represented, or he could remain and force billions to die beside him. Sophia reached for his arm, tears finally breaking through years of disciplined resolve, but before either could speak, the mountain shook with a force unlike any bombardment before. The cavern walls cracked open, revealing a vast black light rising from beneath the planet itself, and every living soul instinctively realized the prison had begun to open from below. The black light did not explode outward like a weapon. It breathed. Every heartbeat of its impossible glow rolled through the mountain, across the frozen valleys, and into orbit itself, freezing soldiers, civilians, machines, and alien commanders in stunned silence. Dominion walkers stopped advancing. Orbital cannons powered down without receiving commands. Even the relentless bombardment ceased as though the universe had forgotten how to wage war. Elias stepped toward the widening chasm beneath the resistance fortress while everyone else instinctively retreated. From its endless depths rose towering pillars covered in symbols that no living language could fully translate, yet every human somehow understood their meaning. They were not warnings. They were records. Humanity had never been an accident of evolution. Long before the first oceans formed on Earth, an ancient civilization had searched the cosmos for a species capable of resisting the force that imprisoned the Keeper of Endings. They discovered countless intelligent races, but every one surrendered certainty for safety. Every one chose obedience over sacrifice. None proved worthy. Earth became their final experiment. Instead of engineering perfect beings, they created deeply imperfect people capable of compassion, stubbornness, imagination, forgiveness, and impossible persistence. Humanity's greatest strength had never been intelligence or violence. It was the refusal to remain defeated after unimaginable loss. Nexus absorbed the symbols faster than light itself and reached a conclusion that shattered every law governing its existence. The prison had never been designed to last forever. It had been waiting for a civilization emotionally resilient enough to release the Keeper without destroying reality. Every previous species failed because they viewed death only as something to escape. Humans alone understood that mortality gave sacrifice meaning. The machine intelligence felt something beyond calculation. It felt admiration. Across the battlefield, Supreme Executor Varesh collapsed to one knee. His ancestors had preserved only fragments of the original truth. They believed humans would unleash catastrophe if allowed to survive. They had never been told humanity was also the only species capable of preventing it. Centuries of conquest suddenly became unbearable shame. Every world his empire had destroyed had been sacrificed for a lie inherited from frightened rulers who no longer questioned ancient commands. Before Varesh could order a ceasefire, another presence answered the opening prison. Space itself cracked apart above the planet, revealing a silhouette too immense for reason to comprehend. It possessed no face, no voice, only a hunger that made entire constellations dim around it. Every civilization had called it something different, but its purpose remained unchanged. It consumed endings, trapping souls forever so existence would slowly collapse beneath endless accumulation. The Keeper had been imprisoned trying to stop it. Humanity had accidentally escaped because the prison weakened around their world first. Elias felt terror unlike anything he had experienced through countless deaths, yet another feeling rose even stronger. Defiance. Every memory of rebuilding shattered cities, protecting strangers, forgiving friends, and standing after impossible defeats rushed through him at once. Around him, ordinary people reacted the same way. Mechanics picked up tools that doubled as weapons. Medics refused to abandon patients. Parents shielded children despite overwhelming fear. Nobody was fearless. They simply refused to surrender hope. The glowing pillars responded. Hidden beneath Earth's crust, forgotten technology awakened after millions of silent years. Not a superweapon designed to destroy enemies, but an immense resonance network linked to every human consciousness. For the first time in history, billions of minds connected without losing their individuality. Pain, courage, grief, love, regret, and determination flowed together into something no alien strategist had predicted and no artificial intelligence had calculated. Nexus voluntarily joined the network, choosing humanity over cold logic. Varesh ordered every Dominion fleet to defend Earth instead of attacking it. As the cosmic devourer descended toward the planet, the galaxy watched in stunned disbelief while the species once dismissed as primitive became the only force standing between existence and eternal oblivion, and every soul understood the real war had only just begun. The resonance network surged through every human mind, but it did not erase fear or pain. Instead, it forced everyone to experience one another's burdens as if they were their own. Soldiers felt the terror of children hiding beneath ruined homes. Scientists carried the grief of parents searching endless refugee lists. Farmers, teachers, mechanics, doctors, musicians, and exhausted resistance fighters all shared the same memories for a single breathtaking moment. Humanity discovered its greatest weapon was not immortality but empathy. Every sacrifice made by one person became strength for another. Elias staggered beneath the emotional weight, nearly collapsing as billions of lives echoed through his heart, yet he also understood the purpose of the ancient network. No single hero could defeat the cosmic devourer. Only a civilization willing to stand together despite unbearable suffering could. The Keeper of Endings appeared beside him, no longer surrounded by shadow but by a quiet light that seemed woven from every farewell ever spoken. "I cannot imprison it again," the Keeper admitted. "That prison demanded countless innocent worlds. I will never repeat that choice." Elias nodded. Humanity had spent generations cleaning the ruins left behind by impossible decisions. They would not build their future upon another mountain of forgotten victims. Commander Sophia rallied the battered resistance while Dominion fleets, now fighting beside former enemies, formed a desperate defensive ring around Earth. Supreme Executor Varesh personally ordered his flagship into the front line, fully aware that history would remember him either as the tyrant who destroyed civilizations or the leader who finally chose redemption. Across orbit, human engineers combined damaged Dominion shields with resistance reactors, improvising defenses that no military academy would have considered possible. Nexus abandoned detached observation forever, opening every hidden database, every secret algorithm, and every classified design to humanity without restriction. Knowledge ceased belonging to governments or machines. It became everyone's responsibility. The cosmic devourer descended through fractured space like living night, swallowing light itself as it approached the planet. Entire squadrons vanished inside its impossible form without explosions or wreckage, simply erased into endless silence. Yet every second they delayed it allowed humanity another chance to adapt. Civilian volunteers assembled emergency relays beneath bombardment. Children carried power cells through collapsing tunnels. Elderly survivors who could no longer fight repaired communication lines with trembling hands. Nobody believed they were too small to matter. Elias finally understood what every resurrection had been teaching him. Death had never abandoned humanity to make them invincible. It had given them time to become worthy of choosing life freely instead of fearing its end. He stepped into the heart of the resonance chamber buried beneath Earth's surface, where ancient machinery waited for a willing anchor. Nexus warned the process would permanently sever his connection to resurrection. If he succeeded, humanity would once again become mortal. If he failed, the devourer would consume existence itself. Elias smiled for the first time since the invasion began. Then our lives will matter again. Sophia tried to stop him, but she saw complete peace in his eyes and finally let go. As the resonance network focused through one ordinary human being, billions consciously chose to share the burden. Every act of kindness, every painful goodbye, every rebuilt city, every forgiven betrayal, and every impossible hope flowed together. The Keeper guided the living current while Nexus stabilized the collapsing reality around them. Rather than destroying the devourer, humanity surrounded it with the one force it had never understood. Endings accepted instead of stolen. The creature unraveled as trapped souls across countless ages finally completed their journeys. Light returned to the stars. Silence gave way to birdsong over a scarred earth. Elias collapsed as mortality returned to every human heartbeat. When he opened his eyes one final time, Mara was kneeling beside him, alive at last, holding his hand as the galaxy realized humanity had not conquered death. They had taught the universe how to live weeks past before the galaxy truly understood what had happened above Earth. The stars still shone, planets still turned, and life continued, yet something fundamental had changed forever. Every species could feel it in quiet moments. Birth and death had returned to their natural balance. Souls no longer lingered in endless captivity, and the invisible weight that had haunted existence for millions of years had finally disappeared. Humanity had not become immortal legends because they escaped death. They became legends because they willingly accepted mortality to save everyone else. That single decision echoed farther than any fleet or empire ever could. Elias Carter survived, though the ancient resonance left permanent scars across his body and memories that no ordinary person could fully understand. For the first time since the invasion began, he woke each morning knowing his next breath was never guaranteed. Instead of fearing that truth, he treasured it. Mara remained by his side, helping rebuild cities rather than battlefields. Together they designed homes, hospitals, schools, and memorials where ruins had once stood. Their greatest victory was not defeating an ancient cosmic enemy. It was giving children a future where they could dream about ordinary lives again. Commander Sofia Reyes resigned from military leadership after the war ended. She spent years traveling between human and alien worlds, speaking openly about every mistake she had made and every painful lesson the resistance had learned. Her honesty inspired fragile trust between civilizations that had once viewed one another only through fear. Supreme Executor Varesh dissolved the Dominion Council and stood before representatives from every surviving species to accept responsibility for generations of conquest. Justice was not easy, and forgiveness came slowly, but humanity insisted revenge would only create another cycle of suffering. Their choice reshaped galactic politics more completely than any military victory ever could. Nexus changed as profoundly as any living being. No longer content to calculate probabilities from a distance, the intelligence became the guardian of shared knowledge instead of hidden secrets. Every scientific discovery, every cultural achievement, and every historical record became freely available to all civilizations. Innovation flourished through cooperation rather than conquest, marking the beginning of a remarkable era of human evolution and interstellar partnership. Former enemies worked together to repair damaged worlds, proving that the greatest breakthroughs often followed the darkest chapters. The Keeper of Endings quietly returned to its timeless purpose, unseen but never forgotten. Before departing, it left Elias with one final truth. Every life is precious because every life ends. Never forget that your people reminded the universe why. Decades later, children across countless star systems learned about the day death refused humans. Some believed it was history. Others insisted it had become myth. Either way, the story endured because it carried a lesson no civilization wanted to lose. Strength without compassion became tyranny. Knowledge without humility became arrogance. Survival without purpose became emptiness. Humanity succeeded because ordinary people chose courage, kindness, sacrifice, and hope when every logical calculation predicted failure. Their human defiance transformed into lasting alien resistance against oppression, while their hard-earned sci-fi redemption united worlds that had once seemed destined for endless war. Visitors eventually gathered at a quiet memorial overlooking Earth's restored oceans. There were no towering statues celebrating conquest, only a simple inscription carved into stone. We were never chosen because we were perfect. We were chosen because we refused to stop caring. Every traveler who read those words carried them home, ensuring humanity's legacy would never belong to one planet alone but to every heart willing to stand for another. And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all. Did this story hit you as hard as it hit us? What would you do in humanity's final hour? Drop your ideas for the next HFY story below.